Welcome to Inside New York's Art World. I am Barbara Lee Diamondstein, and our guest today is Robert Ryman, a man who came to New York 25 years ago as a professional musician and stayed on to become widely known and admired for his dazzling white canvases. A warm welcome to you. Glad that you could join us. Having never studied painting, having arrived here as is it a tenor saxophonist? How did you become a painter?
Well, you have to understand, this was...
Speak up.
Yes, hello, hello?
They're there.
All right. Can you hear? Yeah? No?
Perhaps you can turn the sound
Hello,
up.
hello, hello?
I think the sound is on,
Hold
but you really have to speak in you have such a gentle voice that you have to speak in the biggest voice that you can.
Yes, how's that? Yeah, that's better. So.
It's really you have to speak in the biggest voice that you can. How did someone who came to New York as a tenor saxophonist end up being a painter?
Well, you know, it's that's, I don't know exactly. You know, I came here in '52. I was a jazz musician at that time, and I came to New York for the music, you know, but I had never, you know, I came from Tennessee, and I'd never been really anywhere, I mean, to, you know, outside of Tennessee much, and so coming to New York, I saw many things, you know, I saw everything, just like all the tourists, and I went to museums, and I saw paintings for the first time. And
you had never seen a painting before?
Well, I had seen reproductions of paintings, you know, and I'd seen pictures of flowers and things like that, you know, at people's houses, you know, but nothing of any consequence, and nothing that, you know, I hadn't considered it. I'd never, when I say seen painting, I'd never
in a museum
really,
context
looked at it, and so I did, and I became more interested in painting. It interested me very much, and I became involved with it, and after it was about 2 or 3 years, I gave up the music and decided that I wanted to paint. I wanted to investigate this thing more and really get involved with it.
You had made your living as a musician up until that point. How did you manage to survive?
No, I really didn't make my, it wasn't, I mean, I didn't really make a living as a musician. I might have if I'd kept up with it, but no, well, I did all kinds of flunky jobs, you know. I was, you know, I worked in office buildings, and I did this and that, and then I ended up for a number of years at the Modern Museum as a guard, so that, which was one of my best jobs.
I assume it was also part of your art education.
Yes, it certainly was. I got to, you know, I had the opportunity to see a lot, you know, to spend a lot of time with painting, and then I also worked at the public library in the art division.
And there you read a lot.
Yes. So I got, you know, I was able to read and look through the books and the scrapbooks and folders. And,
Did you ever formally study painting?
No, not as, I didn't go to an art school as such. Not that I mean, I would have, I think, but you should realize that at that time, this is 1954, there wasn't really much of, I mean, there weren't any schools like visual arts, or there was the Art Students League, but that didn't interest me because right from the beginning, I wasn't interested in painting realistically, painting landscapes or still lifes or the figure. However, I did do a little of that. But,
what did your early work look like? Did it have the same scale or color?
Well, you know, when anyone is beginning anything, the first thing I did was find out how things worked. You know, you find out what the paint does, and you know how the brushes work, and what kind of what's going to happen when you put things together, and how colors react together, and so and composition, and there's a lot of experimenting and just trying. You know, just you try and see how things go together, and the technical aspect of it. So I, as all students, you do, you try different things, and so I worked with composition and color and all of those devices.
Surrounded as you were at the Museum of Modern Art, how affected was your vision by all those cubists?
Well, I would spend time with different painters. You know, I would go, I would look at Matisse. I would be involved with his paintings maybe for a week or so. Then I would, go to some of the cubists who say the Picassos and Bachs and Cézanne. So, I learned from all of these painters, and many others also, not just the ones that I saw in modern, but the things that I saw in galleries and from books, of course, the use of the library, just kind of general information, picking up whatever was of interest to me at the moment.
At what point did your work evolve and change from the small drawings and paintings that you were doing, often in color as well?
I'm sorry, what?
At what point did your work begin to change? What informed either your vision or your perception that caused your work to change?
Well, it was a gradual, it's a gradual development. It doesn't, it's not something that happens, at least it didn't with me, overnight or even in a year. You begin to, the more I worked on the paintings, and the more I considered the problems, the more the work would slowly change. I became, after a while, not so interested in the color because I wanted to paint, kind of paint the paint. And of course, I wasn't painting pictures. I think that maybe that's something that should be understood. I wasn't painting an image as we think of, usually painting is thought of as pictures.
You say pictures are not what you make. You make paintings. Perhaps you can describe to us what you mean.
Yes, well, now, you know, let's see. Paintings, well, they can be pictures, and many times they are. I think, of course, at the beginning, paintings were mostly pictures of something, of a person, of a still life, of a situation, of an object. And these pictures involved a certain specific space, the space of the canvas, and usually they were framed to isolate that space from the space of the wall. And they were hung, and still are, on a wall at eye level to be, so they'd be seen, looked at. Now, that's all right, but I was not, since I was not painting a picture, I was not going to paint an image isolated in a space, then how's that? Can people? It had to be approached from a different, I mean, there had to be a different way of looking at it, a different way of seeing it. Now, I wanted to make a painting without this image isolated within the space, so that the painting itself was an image. And also its surround. Later, the wall became itself very important. But that interested me because it seemed to open up many possibilities, many discoveries for myself, because I knew that I could paint a picture, and I knew that I could use composition, and I knew that I could use color and these devices, which I still do, but in a different way maybe than is thought of in the usual picture making. So this interested me very much, this approach to make a painting without it being picture making.
You said that you don't really make white paintings, that you use a lot of white in order to make other things happen with the paint. What does that mean?
Well, you know, anyone who has seen my work, maybe, you know, superficially, superficially could see as if it were only white, it was a white painting, and that was the purpose. I only mean by, if I say that I don't paint a white painting, or I mean I don't paint white paintings, that is not my primary concern, to make white paintings. I think many people have done painting in white and for specific reasons to solve a certain problem that they're working on. But really, once you've done that, once the problem has been solved, there's not much, there wouldn't be much interest in doing it again. I mean, it would become kind of boring just repeating the same image. But I use the white because it's a neutral, you see, it's a paint that can be, that I can use that allows other things to come into focus with the work. The surface, the subtle colors of the surface, the textures,
Have you used blue under some of the pictures, under some of the paintings?
Yes. Well, it's been. I worked on. In fact, just recently, I did some paintings on a blue surface, which was the blue was the color of the surface, and also on some black surfaces, which, of course, will react with the paint and give it a certain depth and a certain movement that affects it. And of course, in this particular case, the material was very thin, maybe an eighth of an inch in thickness, so that an edge was left. So there was a black line and a blue line, which was also part of the composition.
It seems to me that from time to time you are a teacher as well, especially when it comes to question of perception and light. In fact, you've said that perception relates to how we are trained to see and do things. Is perception, as you investigate it, the same thing as the Impressionists were looking into?
What was it I said? I mean,
you said that perception relates to the way we're trained to see and do things. And my question to you is, your perception as you investigate, is it the same that the Impressionists had in mind?
Well, yeah, we're trained, yes, I meant that we're all trained, we train our eyes to see. We're trained to see things in a certain way that we're used to seeing, that we see around us every day, and painters tend to their perception and their vision is maybe a little, more highly tuned, you might say. To an extent better than I had hoped for. Other times it can be more difficult, and I run into problems that I hadn't considered, and I surprise myself by the result. I mean, where it's not really what I thought it was going to be, and so maybe adjustments have to be made and changes, maybe abandon the type of paint, switch to a different surface, change the scale, change the texture, change, maybe it has to do with a light reflection or absorption that isn't what I had thought. There are many these things come into it as the work is progressing. I mean, the result I never am sure of, and I mean, at the beginning. Then I always, if the work is successful, I learn something by doing it, from what happens with the work.
One of the problems that you've tried to resolve is that of edges. You work with edges, sometimes emphasizing the painting's sides with special brackets, and affixing the paintings with special brackets to the wall, but no longer framing them in a traditional sense. Why do you do that? Are you redefining space?
Well, yeah, maybe I hadn't thought of it like that. The fasteners that you talk about, this is something.
They are an industrial fastener.
Well, the fasteners that on these recent paintings I had made especially for the paintings, as to the scale for the paintings and the shape of the fastener and how it would work visually with the painting, and as for its color, even if it was steel, if it were, there again, the light reflection of it, if it were plated with black oxide, so that it was that changed it, or if it were the cadmium plated. But the question, the thinking behind the fasteners has to do with the way a painting hangs on a wall, because now usually paintings, particularly if they're pictures, hang invisibly on a wall, because we're not so interested in that. You know, it's the image that we're looking at, and in a confined space. Now, since this work are not, since it's not a picture, then it could hang visibly, and I wanted it to. I thought that if the hanging, if it were visibly attached to the wall, then it would become more part of the wall, and therefore visually the wall could work with the painting much more. Also, what happens there too is that the painting doesn't exist unless it's on the wall, whereas with the traditional pictures, they can be leaning against the wall. You can look at them because it's always confined. It's defined in a specific space. Whereas with these paintings, they don't really exist unless they're on the wall as part of the wall, as part of the room. The fasteners being the painting consisting of painted surface and the composition, the light reflection and absorption, the edges and structure of the surface of the structure itself, whether it's canvas or plastic or whatever material it is that holds the paint, and then the visual composition of the fasteners, which we see that hold it to the wall and make it part of the wall. So it brings that into our vision also. That was part of the consideration of the fasteners.
In earlier work, I know that you believe that there are other things to do with paint other than make pictures. And in earlier work, and I'm thinking of a now famous show at the Jewish Museum, where a work was taped to the wall. You not only painted the canvas, let the paint spill over to the tape, and ultimately to the wall. Perhaps you could describe the thinking behind that.
That was a similar approach. That was the Jewish Museum. Let's see, that...
I think it was 71.
Yeah, that...
It is the concept more than the location that I'm really interested in.
Well, there were a number of solutions that I did. I mean, that I had tried them. Some were on vinyl sheets that were colors, different colors. One was red, a deep red. One was glue thing. But I think the one that you're, where the paint was applied to the surface was painted, well, first, I should say, the surface was attached to the wall with tape, two at the top and two at the bottom, to hold the surface to the wall, so it could be painted. The surface was painted in a particular way with a particular paint. I mean, which I can tell you about. I mean, I won't go into all of it. So
why did you do that?
Well, I wanted to make the painting. You mean,
Onto the tape and onto the wall.
Oh, yes. Well, you see, first the surface was put on the wall. Well, it was to make a painting as very thin, so that the paint and the wall were just almost one, you see. And it worked with the wall itself. The painting and the wall became one surface. And by that I mean the corner of the wall, for instance, was taken into consideration, and the floor and the ceiling, and the fourth corner. So that the scale of these units had to do with the size of the wall, the height, and the length, and that would vary depending on the wall. Also, the surface of the wall was considered, because all walls are not the same. Some have texture, rough, some are smooth, some, and that has to do with it also. Well, I don't know. I was going to describe the
Please do.
process, but
Well, please do.
there were several different approaches to that. After this paint was dry, you see, then the tape could be removed because it was no longer necessary to hold the material, the surface that was painted to the wall. And when it was removed, you saw where the tape was there. You saw the original surface because of that hadn't been painted where the tape was, and you saw the wall. And in this case, it might have been deeper in the vinyl. And you saw the soft edges. Well, first you saw the hard edge of the surface as it touched the wall, and you saw the soft edge of the paint as it left that surface and went on the wall itself, which actually held the surface to the wall. So that composition wise, I mean, within each individual unit was the soft edge and the hard edge, and then the light reflecting surface and the light absorbing wall, and the color and the texture of the original surface that was not painted because it was covered by tape. Then this was maybe the units were repeated in a series of 5 or 9 or 7. Usually I tried to use an odd number because, I mean, depending on the length of the wall, as I said before, I preferred an odd number because with an odd number you always have a center visually, whereas with an even number you have the wall as your center. And the odd number has a feeling of expansion, of continuing on, whereas the even number is more of a static feeling visually as well, and more of a closed situations, which I use too, but not as much as the odd number.
Listening to you, it becomes increasingly apparent that very little that you do is accidental. It is all very carefully considered. How do you entitle your pictures? Excuse me, your paintings? They certainly do not have the usual descriptive titles that we come to associate with pictures.
No, well, yes, that is really a problem. Titling, and I use the word title. I think all painters have worked on this problem, and I haven't really solved it to my real satisfaction either. It's
you have a rather creative approach to it.
It's, well, you see, first, of course, pictures can be. I can see. It's really shock. Pictures are traditionally titled because usually it's an image of something or for something or about something. So it was traditionally correct to title something, aside from the fact that it identified it and you could remember what one thing was from another thing, and this, and of course, it's still used. In my case, and many painters who work in a manner that I may work in a similar investigation, use titles. I mean, they're again for identification. You have to keep track of what one thing is and from another thing, and know what you're talking about. You know, it's nice to know what painting you're talking about.
Is it really for our purposes rather than yours that you entitle pictures?
No, it's for my purpose and for well, it is necessary, I think. And now, but I wanted to talk about the word title. Now, it's really not. Maybe correct anymore in my case to use the word title, but I prefer to say name of painting because it's, since I'm not painting a picture of something, and the title doesn't really have so much meaning, but a name, yes.
How did you arrive at the name general for a picture, for a painting?
Well, I tried to find names that were recognizable. I mean, it's one thing to make up a word. You know, you can put a lot of letters together and make up a word, or you can say number 1, number 2, number 3, number A, B, C, D, and things like that. But then that becomes also confusing because you say number 77, you know, J, and 1960 or whatever, and then you're not quite sure what it is. But if you have a word for it, then your memory, you can keep track of it. So I would try and come up with names for the paintings that were somewhat common, familiar names, but yet names that did not have too much association, such as general.
But that is ambiguous, because on the one hand it means ordinary, and on the other hand it means of the highest rank. Was that part of your intent as well?
Well, you know, sometimes it works out that way, but I didn't really consider it that much. I picked it actually because I think it was the name of the place where I got the steel. It was called General something, General fabrication or something.
That might be a general fabrication.
But I also meant it as that. It's just kind of, that's a name that is very familiar, but yet doesn't mean all that much like there are others too. Capital and
Is that with an O or an A?
Allied is another name like that. Allied shipping, or allied this, allied. I'm sorry. What did you say?
It was a bad pun. Your use of industrial materials, either the ready-mades or the ones that you've described, the vinyl sheets, the metal fasteners, does that impersonal material have a special significance? Are you saying something philosophical as well as something that is a traditional painterly concern?
No. I use these materials because of the different surfaces that I can work with, and it gives me the opportunity to explore, such as with the steel. That was used. Actually, I didn't really want to use steel. It kind of worked out. I wanted a very thin material that I could paint on, that was strong, but yet I could work with it on a certain scale, with certain sizes, and that could fit very close to the wall. And aluminum wasn't so good because of the technical considerations of the paint and the aluminum and paper wasn't really strong enough, and cardboard was difficult, and plastic was difficult. So I just came about that steel was decided upon, and then I worked with the gray surface of the steel, so that became part of the visual surface. And it's the same approach with the other materials. And you see also it gave me a hard surface, unlike a stretched canvas where you have a soft surface to work.
Is the light a factor? Is there such a thing as New York light?
I don't, maybe so, but I don't know. I'm not so concerned with that.
But light in and of itself is an important factor in your work.
Oh, yes. Oh, very much. My paintings have to do with light, and they're extremely sensitive to light, different lights, different light situations. But I'm really not, New York light doesn't matter. There are places that where the light has really been fantastic, like, not in New York, but other, some place in Europe where the light is
where was that?
Beautiful, but I don't know why exactly. Amsterdam and Holland, but it's really something that doesn't matter so much. In my work, as far as what the light outside is, because I don't paint in that way.
Actually, you don't make much of a fuss about many things, and you've used the expression "no fuss" to describe your own work. What do you mean by that?
I have mean, well,
You have, and widely in print. That the kind of the lack of fussiness, it was almost a Kantian philosophical exchange, and that you compared it to, for example, the work of de Kooning. It has the exact opposite. So your past is coming visited on you now.
I really don't know.
But there certainly is no fussiness in the
I have
painting.
no idea what I said there.
You said at great length to Carter Ratcliffe.
Maybe he was putting it in context or something, but...
He also put it in quotes. But that's really not fair. I'd prefer...
Well, I mean, it's no fuss. Well, I meant, I mean, I probably...
You probably meant.
I think it had to do with no compromise, maybe. Well, I think also it has to do with fussing, yeah. It has to do with when you're painting, when I'm painting, I try and it should be right the first time. I mean, if something has to be struggled over or fussed with, all right, then then I think there's something wrong. There's a problem there, and it never turns out very well. It's best to just abandon it. The approach should be direct and to the point, and without any thing there that doesn't need to be there. I mean, it's particularly a temptation for someone that's beginning painting to maybe fuss a little bit, to add a little something here, just to fool around, maybe to try certain things that might not really be necessary. So I think maybe that's what it was we were talking about.
How does that square with your view of comparing the painter to the research scientist? That certain problems are selected and then one goes about trying to find solutions.
Well, yes, that's. I think that's what painters do. They try and solve problems. I mean, aesthetic problems concerning painting. Very much in the same way that a scientist goes about solving certain problems. I mean, a research scientist, of course, maybe bacteria or something. They try and find solutions, trying to discover solutions to these problems, and they pick one problem out of thousands of things to explore and work on. And it's a similar kind of thing, I think, that painters do. I mean, you can't work on everything that is possible, so you take what interests you most and you explore it. You find what solutions are possible, what is visually, what can happen with this, where it will lead to, and kind of one solution will set off a new problem, whereas it enables you to see something that you weren't able to see before because you didn't know about it. You didn't have the experience in the perception there to see it. So then it kind of snowballs on. And you compare your solutions with other solutions in the same field, and you see that someone else has solved a certain thing, and so you take that into consideration. And that's where the exchange of information, is important. Well, that's what it has to do with.
Your mention of Amsterdam brings to mind the fact that your work is prominently exhibited at both the Stedelijk Museum and the new and distinguished wing of the Kroller-Müller. There is very widespread appreciation and commitment to your work in whole parts of Europe. How do you compare the European response and understanding and perception to your work to American response?
Well, I don't know exactly. There is a great deal of my work in Europe, probably maybe more so than here. I don't know how that happened. Just maybe at one time there was a little more interest there, but maybe to the Europeans are more receptive to painting in general. I don't mean just in my painting, but they seem to. There seems to be a lot of interest in painting, maybe more than here. I don't know. Here there's, and this is a very broad statement. Here there seems
Why not?
to be a lot of, I mean, a great deal of interest in music, maybe more so than visual art.
That's not the way most musicians see it.
Well, yeah, that could be. I mean, I can't hear it.
Are Europeans more interested in the avant-garde, or what they take to be the American avant-garde?
Oh, I don't think so. No, well, it's always a small world, the visual painting. I mean, there are always a group of people, that are interested in it, but it's never, a mass thing. I mean, it's similar to opera, I mean, there are many people who go to the opera and they're very involved with the opera, and then many people who go to the symphony, and then there's the dance, the world of dance and performance and theater. And these are always, and the visual arts, they're always, I mean, it's not a thing that everyone gets involved with. I guess maybe, well, just really interested in it, really not.
You mentioned earlier that there was a great deal of information available in New York. How important is it to be a part of the art establishment?
Well, you mean to be in New York? You mean,
How influential is criticism on your work? How does it affect your work?
oh, no, well, criticism doesn't really affect it at all. I mean, it's surprising sometimes. I mean, I learned some things that I hadn't really considered from reading certain things.
For example?
Actually, I haven't read anything in a long time. I just remember at times being surprised at how someone came up with something that I hadn't considered or hadn't intended, but it really has no effect on the work. I mean, because you see, it's a different thing. It's almost as if the work, you see, the work that is being done now, it's almost as if it had already been done, and there's a continual thinking. I mean, I tend to think, I'm always kind of thinking ahead. I mean, I'm always involved with what I'm not doing, rather than, I mean, I'm more involved with what I'm not doing, or what I'm about to do, is what I should say, rather than what I'm doing at the moment. So that it's as if I'm always kind of someplace else other than what is seen at the moment. So that well, I mean, it doesn't have that much effect.
To the works of what other painters do you respond? Who has helped inform your vision, for example?
Well, Matisse, I guess, was the biggest, most important painter for me at one time, and there were others. Cezanne, to a certain extent, and Rothko also, and any number of painters, you know, that I would look at from time to time, Mondrian. It always had to do with not so much what they were painting, you know, but how they were doing it, you know, what they were, how they were putting things together, you know, and why. It was much more of the how they did it and why they did it than what they were doing. So, you know, there were, you know, you can sometimes just pick up a little thing from looking at something and hardly realize where you saw that, you know, how it came to you. It's a very subtle kind of thing.
The only partial surprise in your list is the inclusion, of course, of that great colorist, Matisse. Do you envision the possibility of your returning to color, or even to having a bound painting, your version of a frame?
Well, anything is possible, I guess, but, you know, it's, I don't think of it as that I don't think of my work as having not to do with color. I mean, it is true that I am not really involved with color the way some painters are as a problem. But I do, I mean, the color is considered the subtle surfaces and the colors that I use. And so I don't know that that will change, but it might. If color, I mean, specific colors, you know, we're talking about red, green, or blue, where the solution to something, to a problem, and there's no reason why it couldn't be used. But I don't know anything. It doesn't seem that way, that the way I'm approaching things at the moment.
A number of your works seem very similar. What makes each of them unique?
Well, similarities. Well, you know, it's just it's simply the way they're painted. You know, Monet's and we also did some haystacks, a number of haystacks that were very similar, but very unique. And I think it's the same. Every painter has his own sensibility, his own sense of working, his working sense, so that whatever he does, usually he or she will always be the way they would approach it. And so it's usually a similar approach. But unique, yes. I don't know if I answered that.
I think you have. And not only have you answered the question, for illuminating your work and for helping us all see new things. Very special thanks to you, Robert Ryman, for being with us tonight. I'm Barbara Lee Diamondstein, and this is Inside New York's Art World. Thank you very much. And what we do now is have the class share in the conversation. If you have a question, will you please raise your hand? There's a woman close to the aisle here.
Obviously, if you're curious about whether you want your paintings to be kept, do they stay permanently on the wall, which is it's attached to, you might say?
No, not always. In some cases, those paintings were destroyed, and I mean, they only existed at that time and place. However, they could be done in a different place, in a permanent situation. And you're speaking of just a specific kind of painting that I did, but there are others that are permanent and can be reinstalled somewhere.
The question was, how do you feel when they're destroyed?
No, I mean, that was just part of the work. I mean,
On temporary exhibit.
Yes, because they were temporary by nature, so there was